Hello, and how are you doing today? I am so excited to introduce you to a new friend of mine who is Zora the Explorer. That's not her full name and her real name, but I just love saying it because she's vibrant and she's interesting and she's traveling around the world and she's a dermatologist, which is the study of aging and its effects on medical treatment and well-being, who's on a mission to disrupt menopause, stigma, and ageism. She is the host of the Hack My Life podcast, Hack My Age, excuse me, podcast, and she focuses on biohacking for women going through menopause transition. Zora is a 53-year-old digital nomad currently living in Europe or maybe Asia by the time this podcast is released. She also obviously loves adventure and is the author of the Longevity Master Program, Longevity Master Plan, and the cookbook Eating for Longevity, as well as the creator of an online program, several online programs for women in peri and post menopause. Her social media and her podcast following is astronomical, and she speaks 6 languages. Wow. Zora, thank you so much for being here. How are you doing
Oh,
today?
thank you for having me. And what a great introduction. And Hack My Life is actually a pretty good name too. I just
Right? I
didn't
mean,
think of
why not?
that.
So first, I just have to ask, since I'm all about adventure, tell us about your nomadic lifestyle. What started
So,
that, and where are you, and what are you
oh,
doing?
so yeah, nomad. I think more and more people are hearing that word nomad, especially post COVID, when people are realize they can travel. I mean, live in somewhere else and work and work remotely. But just to make a little distinction, I've been an expat, an expatriate for most of my life, meaning I was born in the US, but living in another country for many, I think most of my life, I've not been in the US. So living for maybe 3 years, 2 years, 7 years, 9 years was my longest stint. And then my husband and I became nomads when the kids left the home and we were empty nesters. And at the time we were living in Hong Kong. So we were in Hong Kong for 4 years. And then we were only there for our children because we wanted them to have an experience in Asia and finish their high school in Asia. And living there is different than actually visiting. And we love to travel, both of us, and the whole family does. So when they left, I said, well, there's no reason to be here. We do everything online. We've been living digitally since the year 2000. So we've been doing this for 23 years now. And it's not anything new for us. And so we decided to sell our home, sell our cars, sell our furniture, get rid of everything, and just be a minimalist lifestyle and living out of a suitcase. And that was in 2018. And then we were traveling like that. And every 1 to 4 weeks, we would be in a new country. And we enjoyed it. I'm a content creator, so I found a lot of great content to create when I was traveling. And as before, this is before I became a gerontologist, I was very curious in aging and longevity and how are people living around the world. So I would do all these little observational studies of my own, create content, and it was wonderful. And then COVID hit. We got stuck in Spain, and so we were in the south of Spain for a little while, and then now it's much easier to travel. We sort of picked up our wings again, and now we're flying around and doing lots of other things too. So luckily both my husband and I like to travel, and we enjoy this lifestyle so far. I always say when I get grandkids, then I am putting my feet down and I want to have a place to receive them.
I have seen that. I have seen that happen more than once. Yeah. So, wow, what a cool lifestyle. And I have a few friends over the years who are nomads in their own way, but very few that I know who actually work and travel consistently. So, kudos to you. So, tell us about what got you thinking about aging and lifestyle and its effects on menopause and women, and what got you going?
Oh, it's been a journey. But if I have to reel back, and I'll try to make this short, I was born and raised in LA, Los Angeles. So I always say it's like in your LA DNA to want to look good and feel good as you age. It's just there in the air. But I just pretty much wanted to be in a good condition when I aged and look good in a bikini and whatever. That's when I was younger. And then my mother got breast cancer and she died when she was 57.
Oh,
Then I got serious, like, okay, I just don't want to die early. So what can I do to myself, my body, my mind, my spirit, so that I don't have the same fate as her. And then with the mapping of the human genome, I think it was 2008, we found out that actually it's about 20% genetics, so if you're going to get a certain disease in life, and 80% is diet and lifestyle, things that we can modify. And that was a huge lift off my shoulders. I said, oh my gosh, we can actually do something about this. And it's not my fate. I'm 53 now. So, like you always, if you lose a parent at a certain age, you always measure yourself like, I got to get past that 57, and you'll be happier. But it's just something mental. But I think that led me into just the health and wellness circles. And then I learned about aging and longevity and the biohacking community, which has been around forever, just got a name, biohacking, recently. And that obviously interested me too. And I learned that, wow, there's a lot of things that doctors aren't talking about, but the research is showing. And then biohackers are people who like to experiment on themselves, because we just believe in our own N of one experiment. And the only one that matters is you. And so I found that very intriguing. I learned more about that. Then I became a health coach and coaching women. At the time, when I was doing a lot of health coaching, it was women in their 40s going through perimenopause. And at the time, I wasn't even really sure what perimenopause was, because I was in my late 30s, early 40s, was not having any symptoms, not paying attention at all. But now in retrospect, I go, oh my gosh, they were actually having hormonal disruptions and their hormones were being lost and everything. So we've eventually figured this out. But as I approached 50, I got more and more requests to share information and content about menopause and hormones. And that's it's the community that drove me to this place where I am right now. And of course, this is interesting to me because I'm going through it, perimenopause, right now myself. So I want to know what's going to happen. And I think a lot more information is out now than it was 5 or 10 years ago.
Gosh. Yes, the amount of information. In fact, it's really interesting. Like, I probably went through menopause 13 years ago, something like that. And at the time, it was just, you sucked it up, you did it, and you're done, right? And now there's all these women like you and other people out there who are just doing amazing things and sharing amazing information of how, like, I could have made things probably not easier on me, because it was actually a very easy transition for me, but probably healthier for me. And so the interesting thing to me now is that you're coming out with this information. You're sharing it. The doctors never shared this. And you're helping women, whether they're starting in the middle of it or post, right? So let's start with post, if you don't mind, since it's all about me. Just, I mean, I'm laughing, but it's true, because like a lot of people, once they go through, a lot of the women I've talked to just assume it's done. There's nothing else we can do. So is there anything that we should be looking at or doing differently after menopause?
Absolutely. It's crazy how this is the gerontologist in me too speaking, is like, you just sort of fall off the planet at a certain age. Like, people, once you've gone post-menopause, like, you're done. No. And in fact, I think right now we only have one word, post-menopause. But I think in the future, the research may show actually a woman in her 60s has a different menopausal experience than when she is arriving in her 70s or her 80s. There's no studies on this. There are very little studies on older adults, very little studies on women. And so you can imagine that combination together, there's practically nothing. So, but the population is aging. So we need to have this information and this research done. And so I believe they'll probably come up with new terminologies as we learn what the menopausal experience is for a woman going through it in her older age. So right now we don't have that much information, but we you're going to be living, if you're lucky, with menopause or post-menopausal for 30, 40 years. I mean,
Right.
really, it's an important part.
It is an important part.
Our biology and our just being. So I think for women post-menopause, definitely you need to look at certain things like your bone health. Women more than men get osteoporosis, right? There's heart disease. Women die of heart disease just as much as men. So we need to, and it's not like, oh, you're protected once you post menopause. No, like the body keeps evolving. And because we have a loss of these hormones of estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, all these hormones are being depleted. Well, that has a major effect on the physiology of the body and the mind as well. So we can talk about the dementia and Alzheimer's, again, also a female-centric disease. Why are these happening more to women? And why is it happening more to women post-menopause when we start losing all our hormones? So there's a lot of work to be done, a lot of studies still need to be done, but there's so much that we can do now in whether it's perimenopause, that's 5 years or sometimes 10 before you hit that menopause date, which is just a 1-day event. Menopause, we always use the word menopause for like the whole shebang, peri and post, but really menopause is that 1 day that you have 12 months with consecutive months without your period. So just 1 day, and then after that, it's all called postmenopause. But we do need to pay attention to our hormonal health. Still, we still need to pay attention to how we move and how we sleep and our stress management. All this affects the body. So really, we do need the body. And sometimes it drives me crazy when people tell me, "Oh, maybe you need to slow down." And oh, I'm like, what? Yeah, I'm glad you're laughing because no, it's a time to speed up. And actually, it's a time to work a little harder because it used to be so easy when I was younger to build muscle or to do certain things or to squat. Now I got to work a little harder to be able to function just normally. So it is a very, very important phase of life. And I know you're all about fitness and all that. And we do need it's kind of it's one of the magic bullets for so many things. So I really encourage people to please pay attention to your bodies, to your health, to your fitness as you go through every stage of menopause.
Good point. Yeah. I mean, I do know that the last thing I would ever suggest to somebody is to slow down. Because why?
Yeah.
Right? Like life is here to be lived. And so talk about, since we've started the after, like what for everybody listening who is pre or during menopause, what do they need to be thinking about and focusing on as far as keeping their health up, other than, obviously moving, sleeping well, eating well? What else should they be looking at?
So I always say longevity starts in childhood. And I would say the same thing for menopause. The sooner you start taking care of your body and your health, the higher the probabilities that you will have a smoother transition through menopause and beyond, because these habits are ingrained in you. And so I would love to see women who are obviously taking care of their bodies and in terms of exercise and eating whatever diet is that works for them. I'm diet agnostic. I've seen many diets all around the world work for many people in
Right.
different ways. But there is a change that needs to happen as we go through the menopause because of insulin resistance, and we become, our blood sugar becomes a little bit more out of control, and that's what we need to pay a little bit more attention to that in terms of changing the diet as when we were younger. But you start to see these effects when you're in perimenopause. So I strongly encourage women to also look at their mental health as well and their spiritual health as well. It's so hard to think of all these things when you're raising a family, if you've got little kids running around, and who has the time to think about that? But it does eventually catch up with you. And so this is called an allostatic load. So imagine a bucket, and that's every little stressor you have in life just gets filled in that bucket. And then the bucket gets kind of full. And this is full of not only the stress that we have in our life, the things that are happening, but I'm talking about oxidative stress, the stress on the cells, talking about glycation that happens when these proteins stick to your these sugar molecules stick to your proteins and fold them and make them give you problems. And then you have inflammation, and all this stuff just slowly builds up, and then it starts to overflow, and that's when we start to see problems, whether it's joint issues, or it's some heart disease, or it's some arthritis, or it's some pains in your body. You have no idea where they came from. And it may stop you from waking up in the morning and going on your day. And you're like, what in the world happened? I'm only 40 and I'm still kind of broken. And it could be because the allostatic load is just too high. So I really would like people to take care of themselves, learn more about their bodies. I really encourage women any age, pretty much when you get your period, start understanding your hormones, start tracking your periods, start putting them in a little app. There's so many apps out there, and look at your body, observe your body through your lifetime, and how with the fluctuations of the hormones, you can start to see patterns. And even when you're going through perimenopause, when all the hormones are all over the place, you can still see some patterns and things that are triggering you in certain areas. So if you want to get a little bit more detailed, and sort of like, okay, what does that mean? What do I do to take care of my body and mind and spirit? And everybody's, again, very different. That's what biohackers are all about. We understand bio individuality. What works for one person may or may not work
Right.
for you, right?
Right.
So you just kind of go through some little experiments, right? Sometimes they go well and sometimes they don't go well. And even when they don't go well, that's information for you. How is your body reacting to, I don't know, some keto diet that's out there trending? How does your body react to a cold plunge, doing some ice baths, for example, cold thermogenesis? Or how does your body react to whatever it is? When you go outside to train or to do your exercise, you go for a walk in nature. How do you feel after that, as opposed to going to a gym? And maybe there's time. I'm not saying that going outside is better than a gym. There's advantages and disadvantages for everything, but it's all about learning about your body and how does it react to things. And what I do as a health coach is try to teach people to dial into their bodies. And because you may ask, how do you feel after you eat that thing? I don't know. How do you feel after you eat rice? I have no idea. And then maybe it's through the biohacking techniques, we would put on a continuous blood glucose monitor on their arm that measures their blood sugar
Right.
levels.
Right.
And then you see it spike and then drop real fast. And then they go, God, I really feel tired after I eat rice, and look at that spike, So you can try to put these things together. And that's what biohackers love, to have these little gadgets and things. It's not only about that. That's kind of secondary, but it gives you information, gives you data to maybe confirm and train you to dial into your body. And then you don't need that stuff, those gadgets anymore, because you've started to learn about things. So I think the biggest thing women can do as they're approaching menopause is to learn about their bodies as much as they possibly can without becoming obsessive, right? Because you can
Right.
get some of these gadgets or even a scale. Like, how many times you met people who are like married to a scale and they think that
Right.
number is just going to rule their life for everything, but just have a good day or bad day depending on the number. It's not about becoming obsessive. It's about finding that balance and learning more about your body.
So bottom line, awareness. Like, just be super aware of yourself. Start early. If you've already gone through this, like for myself, maybe I could encourage my nieces to be, more aware of their bodies, more aware of being active. I mean, I will say I'd never really thought about it before until you were talking. Um, the whole going through menopause for me was very, very simple. Like, it was I was, in fact, my doctor told me, well, that's not true. It couldn't have been that easy. This was not my
Really?
original doctor, but this was a doctor I gynecologist I went to later. She's like, oh, it probably wasn't that easy. You've just forgotten. And
I get
I
a
looked
lot of
at her.
that on my social media when I share these reels of women around the world. I'm so glad you said that, because I get the same feedback, and it's
It's
shocking.
Yeah, it is shocking because, and this was a woman. Like, I mean, I might even expect it, like, not that I'm trash talking guys, but I might have expected it from a guy to say that, but this was a woman who said that. And so I was taken aback a bit, but I do know that I've eaten a diet that works for me for 40 plus years. I've
Mm.
been at the gym since I was 18. I do all the things, or I don't do all the things. That's not a fair statement. I've done a lot of things that are well for me. And so it probably just helped. It probably just helped the whole transition. So, if you're thinking about, if you're listening now, I can say that as a single individual, only aware of our own body, it probably did help. So
It did.
it's
It
it's
did. I'm sure
great.
it
It's
did.
great information to just think about, like, the things that you can do now. Sleeping, obviously, right? Sleep is one of those
Mhm.
things. And it's probably the only thing that was disrupted for me, because I did get some of the hot sweats or cold
Night
sweats or whatever they're
sweats.
called.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Ah, that was nasty." All right, but lucky it was just short. And so, yeah, thinking about that, starting early, and if you can't start early, start now,
It's
right?
never too
Like,
late.
your
Yeah.
best time to start is the moment that you have awareness. Um,
Yeah.
so, okay,
We can
I
reverse a lot of damage, actually. I think people, I don't want them to think, oh, it's hopeless. I never did this when I was younger, and I'm not as cool as Kelly and Zora. You've been doing this for their lifetime. Yes, it helps a lot that we've done
it
it for a
does.
lifetime, but it's never too late. There are things that you can reverse, even including osteoporosis. We can. Diabetes, we can. So you're not doomed if you've been uh, given this sort of diagnosis. So please
Oh,
just
yeah,
start now.
you just start. And for me, I mean, I have or a couple of years ago, last DEXA scan, I showed osteoporosis,
Mm.
right?
Even though
And
you're exercising and do all
even
the right things.
though I've been
Interesting.
lifting weights since
Yeah.
I was 18. Now, not every day for my last
Yeah, of
life, it
course.
was on and off. Um, and even though I've taken supplements and stuff like that. So yes, I mean, that's probably some of my DNA, but at the same time, to me, it wasn't a life sentence. It was oh, well, what do we do differently now?
I'm
Be
curious, did you try, it's probably no at the time, I'm sure it was still not in vogue, is hormone therapy, because it's
I
been shown
didn't.
to be protective against
I
osteoarthritis.
I didn't. I mean, it was at the time I was told that's very dangerous for you,
Hmm.
very dangerous for your heart. And my sister did it, and I was like, "Oh, be careful," right? Like, I was told this is really deadly. And now I read that that was probably incorrect.
There was
And
the Women's Health Initiative study that was done in 2002, and it's been completely debunked already. And now, unfortunately, doctors still need to catch up. They're not reading the latest research. But
right.
this made headline news before it was actually, the study was officially finished. They had to
Okay.
stop the study, but they didn't quite make the release of why, and everything. But journalists got a hold of that, and that made headline news. And then when they actually, it was not that long after, they said, oops, sorry, this is why. And now, if only unless you go back and read those studies, you'll find out what really happened.
Yeah,
But the damage was done. And
it was.
unfortunately, there were no headlines of, oh, sorry, the study was
Whoops.
was wrong. And it's a pity. It's only now that we're getting this information, and doctors are trying, the doctors who are on top of this are trying to get the information out that, oh my gosh, we made a big mistake. All these generations of women who've been suffering in silence, scared of hormones, scared of this, and they're actually, it's can be protective. It may
Yes.
be protective.
Yeah.
And if it weren't, I mean, if it weren't, then all these women who have not been on hormone therapy, which is the majority of women for the last 20, 30, 40 years, well, why are they getting sick still? Right? If that's supposed to be so bad for you. Right. So I think only in the next generations, we're going to find out really how protective is it, against osteoporosis. Like, it's still just being studied. There's nothing really
Mhm.
conclusive. The osteoporosis stuff is, but all the heart protection, brain protection, all this stuff is, there's studies out there, and everybody's grabbing onto that. But for the menopause societies to make this big blanket statement like they've done for osteoporosis, it's not there yet. We still don't know. We still don't really know. But again, that's why it's so hard for women right now going through it. Like, oh, do I do it? Do I not do it? Do I do it even if I don't have symptoms because it's still protective? And I mean, there are a lot of questions out there, but that's why I encourage women to really do your homework. Don't just depend on your doctor to solve all your problems. There's so many books out there and podcasts and information, and every woman is different, right? So you talk to your doctor about the risks and the benefits, and then you make your own decision, not just because your girlfriend said this is the best thing to do or the worst thing to do.
Right. And I'm so glad you brought that up, because I think it was probably one of those blips in my life that if I could
Yeah.
go back, I would change. But and you also bring up something else that I think we just did a podcast on this, or when we go live, the podcast is either coming or has just happened. And it's about taking control and management of your health, like being your own guardian, because
Yeah.
we are told things from whomever, and it's up to us to listen and then discern,
Yeah.
you
It's
know.
hard to be health literate in that sense. And it takes like studying things
It
and
does
learning
take studying
things.
things. Yeah,
And well, you're going to have to learn about estrogen and progesterone. I'm sorry, those may be big words for you now, but if you repeat them over and over and over again, then they'll sink in. And then you'll start learning some things. And then you experiment, try
that's right.
different
You do.
things. And that's the only, your body will tell you. And that's all you can do. And you take a risk if you do things, and you take a risk if you don't do things. Sorry, that's life. So
It's so true, right?
yeah, but
It is true.
I like you
Oh,
saying
man.
is be your own best health advocate.
Yeah,
That's what I think is important. And I think women in certain generations, I want to say the older generations, we've been taught to just do what your doctor says. Let's not rock the boat. Let's not make waves. We don't want to, the doctor knows everything. And it's really hard. I have women who were following me in their 50s, and what they do is they take their mom to the doctor, they sit with them, and they advocate for their
right,
parent,
right.
because they
Yes,
may be more health literate, or they don't care. They want to say, look, yes, my mom needs this medication, or she does not need this medication, whatever it stands that you have. Because we women, we know through the little research we have, are ignored more than men in as we go through life in terms of the medical care we get. The older we get, the less attention we get. We may be put aside because, you know what, I'm going to die anyways. Let's save the medication for somebody younger. I mean, it's terrible. It's health rationing. It happens. And
interesting.
so if you don't stand up for yourself and say, I don't care how old you think I am, I want this. And it's really hard if that's not your personality and that's not your style. Get someone to go with you to be
Mhm.
that advocate for you.
Yeah, and I guess I have to tell this story, because when my mother had a stroke and she fell. So then she was in a wheelchair. Now, this was an extraordinarily vibrant woman. Like, she was top of her game, mid 80s. And she started getting all these different medications. Well, I noticed that she had become quite batty is the word that came to mind. I'm sorry. That's what I thought of my mom. You're getting batty. This is after about a year. And lucky, lucky for me, my sister said, that's not right. Now, I was the caretaker, so I'd been in it every day. And I was like, she's just been getting like this more and more. And yeah, I mean, my sister made the right decision. She said, you need to get her to another doctor. And I
Good
did.
for
I
her.
took her to a neurologist. And he took one look at the whole thing, everything she was taking. And he said, you know what? Your mother is a vibrant woman who happens to be in a wheelchair. And this is interacting with this, and this is interacting with this. And someone needs to stop this. And he did. He like completely changed what she was taking. And within a couple of days, my mom was back.
Wow.
And this was me having kind of like, after, I don't know, it'd been a year and a half, I was kind of getting run down and tired about the whole thing. And I'm like, oh, just take the medicine, mom. Right. Let's just do it. And I was wrong. Right. And it woke me up too. After that, I became a much better advocate for it, because I realized that we have to be paying attention to these things. So,
Yeah. And you learn for yourself too. As
oh
next
yeah.
time you go to the doctor, you can stand up for yourself too. It's a learning experience for everyone. And falls are a big deal, right?
They are a big
Fractures
deal.
are a big deal. And when I was first learning about this, I was like, what's the big, why are we spending so much time on falls, falls and fall prevention? I'm just falling, stand up and get up and go. And actually, no. Mortality risk for after a fall is 9.6% during the first 30 days. So you may die within 30, there's almost 10% of people who just die right away. Then it goes up to 33% after a period of 1 year. So that's huge. If you're losing 30% of our population, and which are mostly women who are falling and falling, getting these fractures, and it's within a year, it's huge. And there are many reasons for that. I mean, everyone has a different reason. Sometimes it's because, yeah, they have an infection in the hospital, or maybe they haven't quite recovered and they don't have this social life that they had. They're not getting outdoors. They can't move the same way. They become depressed and then just sort of spirals out of control. It's really a big deal. So that's why I also like to stress women in osteoporosis, where some of this just starts, right? Because your bones are fragile. And the CDC in the US, for example, says that 13% of women between the ages of 50 to 64 had osteoporosis. 13%, but many of these women are not even diagnosed. And I did a great podcast with what's his name, Dr. Doug Lucas, all about osteoporosis. That's his jam. That's all he does, is treat people with osteoporosis and helps them reverse it. And he says that in the US, the health insurance will pay for your bone density scan when you're 65. And he's like, that's way too late.
Right.
He sees women in their 50s coming in with either osteoporosis or osteopenia, which is just the time just before osteoporosis. And he's like, you got to know, you got to know. And so all he says is just at your age, I don't know, in your 40s, probably, I can't remember what he said. I think it was in your 40s or even 30s. Even he's seen people in their 20s with osteoporosis. So anytime is a fine time to just do one little scan. That's all you have to do. And then as you get older, you'll do them more frequently, maybe once a year. And you see if it's trending down or trending up. So I really encourage, I know all your listeners are at that age. Please go get a bone density scan. It doesn't hurt.
No.
And if your insurance doesn't cover it, I think in the US it's about $100-something.
Yeah, it's not much. I mean, I pay
Yeah.
cash for mine. And yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just a good knowledge, right? Good knowledge on
Yeah.
that one. So it comes back to
How's your
being
mom
a
doing, by the way? Sorry, I just want to.
oh, my
How's
mom,
your mom?
she passed away.
Oh, she did.
She did. She
Oh.
passed
How
away
much longer after her fall? I mean, or would she recuperate?
probably 3 years.
Hmm.
Yeah. Probably about 3 years.
And
Yeah.
she was always in a wheelchair after that?
She was. Okay. So what happened with her? And this was my mother was a fifth degree black belt in Taekwondo. Back, okay,
Active.
she started doing this in her 50s before, any women did this. She was a little teeny weeny thing, like, wait,
Oh.
about your size, about your size. And she was a yoga instructor. And she was just all these things. And
Wow.
she fell, she had a stroke. She fell. And then after that, they put a pin in her hip. Well, of course, the
Mhm.
pin didn't hold because she had bone loss.
Yeah.
And truthfully, like 3 years into this, she wasn't living the life she wanted to live. And she and I were both very clear. Had a DNR on her. She was like,
Mhm.
and she went in because she had a bad, she was sick. She felt bad, infection. And, that was that.
Wow.
And, it was, it was like, I mean, I'm talking as if it was just, that was the thing. She was my best friend, and my
Oh,
favorite
so
person. But at the
sorry.
same time, she didn't want to live like that either.
No,
So,
of course.
you know,
Oh, thank you for sharing that. I'm so sorry to hear about your loss, and it's hard, especially when you're close.
yeah,
And she's an inspiration, and it wasn't anything she did wrong, right? She's an active person. Here we are promoting, let's be active, and it's going to protect you. And sometimes it's not enough.
sometimes it's not enough. And I will say, she did smoke. Like,
Mm.
she thought I didn't know.
How funny.
Is that funny or what? Like,
It's a
she
little
was
bit of
like,
role reversal.
it was totally
Mom's
like
hiding a little
sneaking
cigarette.
cigarettes in the room with a fan on. I'm like, Mom, give it a break.
That is funny. Oh my God,
So, but
hilarious.
had to let her be herself.
So cute.
All right. So even though I said this is all about me, it's not. So let's hop into one more thing because and this is like I'm completely diverting from everything we talked about, but I mentioned this before our call, and it's something that I'm very interested in. I noticed it on your website, and it has to do with infrared. So
Mm,
I see a lot of value for women, all ages, with infrared saunas. And so I wanted to find out, what do you think about infrared saunas? What do you think the value is? Tell us about infrared lights, light panels. Give us a little scoop on this. Because when I talk about it, I'm just talking about it anecdotally, right? You've got
yeah.
the knowledge. Tell us.
So, okay, I'm not a red light therapy specialist, but I've
Okay.
interviewed several of them. And so I'm going to give you the information that I've learned from them because they're truly experts and doctors and people who create these things as well. And so I did a fabulous podcast on how to choose a red light therapy device. And because there's so many out there. So
Right.
the benefits generally, I mean, there's the claims are, the list is long. You're like, oh, it's a cure all for everything, just
Right.
like a lot of those other things. But everybody has to understand that there is research done on red light therapy. It is called also photobiomodulation. There are a number of benefits that range from blood circulation, better intracellular communication, anti-inflammation. It helps heal your gut. It can help grow hair. I mean, it's just sounds like miracles, but that's because of the blood flow and everything. And so what you have many devices out there. So you may see the original, the OG of red light therapy is the sun. So that's the
Right.
time when the sun is rising or the sun is setting, and you can see on your skin it turns a little orangey red. That's red light. That's red light therapy. So you can, if you can't get a device or don't want one or don't have the money, well, just go and try to get a sunrise and a sunset. It's not quite exactly the same, but there are benefits. There are more benefits with the sun that doesn't happen with the device, and there's more benefits that happen to the device that doesn't happen with the sun. So you have to weigh the benefits and the drawbacks. So the sun is what's happening is giving you, there's certain wavelengths in the sun, and it's affecting you on a cellular level. And the sun obviously is quite far away, so it's a little bit more superficial, but there's other things that happen intracellularly, sort of is giving you the vitamin D that you get from the sun and you don't quite get from a device. So that's one of the benefits. But when you have a device, and you can have panels, you can have like a big panel that you hang in the bathroom door. It's the size of your door and it has all these red bulbs on them. Well, you can have a sauna where it's red inside the sauna and you have the bulbs there. And there's far infrared and near infrared. There's different wavelengths depending on what it is that you're trying to achieve. So when you have a bigger device like a panel or a sauna, you're generally getting sort of a whole body effect. You're affecting your everything from the top of your head and your hair all the way down to your toes and your toenails, and you kind of hit everything at the same time. But then you have devices that are smaller, that are wrap around or small square or something that you could put on top of your body, and that will have different wavelengths as well. And because most of the time when you're in a sauna or with a panel, you don't like put the panel on your body, you don't put your back and lean against it. You have to just let it do its thing as you're brushing your teeth or taking a bath or whatever. So it's convenient in that sense that you can still go and do things, whereas you have a device, sometimes you can strap it on your back if you have lower back pain. So it is, because it's anti-inflammatory and brings up more blood circulation. That's why people feel pain relief when they're wearing these devices. And usually, whether it's a panel or these devices, it's about a 10-minute session. It's not like you sit there for an hour. In an infrared sauna, as opposed to a dry heat sauna or wet sauna, Turkish sauna, all these things, you can sit in there for an hour without a problem because it's not that hot. It's not trying to heat the body on the outside. It's heating the body on the inside but it's not as strong. So you still get a little hot, you get a little bit sweaty, but people are sitting in these saunas and scrolling on their phones or watching a movie or like doing some exercises, a little bit of yoga. You can do things in there. You can tolerate it better. And evidently they're also save more electricity than say a traditional sauna that needs, a lot of energy and a lot of time to heat up. Like these things, right away you go into it. So they're quite convenient. And then you have all these saunas that have these bells and whistles on it too, but they can range, I think they're about $10,000 or $15,000. I mean, they're quite expensive.
Right.
But if you kind of like that whole body effect, there's these things called red light blankets, or like it's like a sleeping bag, or things you can actually go and put your body in, and they're more portable. Like if you don't, like I don't have a space to put it in my house, a sauna, you can get these covers as well. But I like the devices just because I'm athletic like you, and you always have some pain somewhere doing something, and you want to lower that inflammation as much as possible so you can get back to your active lifestyle again. And so those are things. And then you have the red light devices that are much less I don't say invasive, but the wavelength is less intense, and you wear it on your face, and that's of a beauty effect. So you can boost your collagen, and you have these wonderful effects. Well, think about the blood circulation that's going on in your face when you have this thing on your face. And sometimes when you have these devices a little bit closer to your head or your neck, some people have said, oh, my hair starts to grow better because you're getting again that blood circulation, and there's so many great benefits. But in my experience, I see that everyone has a little bit of a different effect. Some people can get great effects with 10 minutes. Some people need 3 rounds of 10 minutes on different body parts, or some people need 2 weeks in that sauna before they start feeling good. Some people feel nothing, nothing happens. And sometimes it just doesn't do. Yeah. It's one of those things. I wish I could say across the board, yes, it makes everybody's hair grow and skin glow and takes away those veins for everybody, but it's not the case. So if you can test one out or borrow one or go into a sauna that's, you could just pay for the day or whatever, you can test it out, and then you see, I see some benefits, and maybe I will invest in something like that.
Interesting. Okay. Perfect. So it's a little bit individual, seems to help with inflammation, circulation, and more.
Intracellular communication. Yeah, it gets deeper into the self as opposed to a traditional sauna, say, for example.
Okay. Perfect. So what else? What else should we know before we wrap up? Because I've had you on so long and I could talk to you forever, but tell us, is there one particular thing that you would like everyone to know as they come away from this podcast?
So for the women who are in perimenopause and going through that transition, please know that you don't need to suffer. You don't need to grit your teeth and bear it. You may feeling like you're having really poor sleep because of hot flashes, or just waking up in the middle of the night. Maybe you having this extra weight gain. You don't know where it came from. Moodiness or brain fog, joint pain, fatigue, like the list goes on and on. You don't need to suffer. And there are things that we can do. And this is what I teach women is how to biohack their way through menopause. There's so many things from bioidentical hormones to some of these gadgets, the red light sauna, or a bit of a cold plunge, or changing your diet and exercise. It's so important. Really do something about it, and know that there are women who don't have any symptoms. It just happens. But just because you don't have symptoms doesn't mean that you're not having changes under the hood, what's going on in the body. So if you are post-menopause, same thing. You go, I feel really good. And that's, it's good. I'm not saying that everything's wrong, but the biohacker in me would say, still get your osteoporosis bone density test and get your blood work done every year. If you can do it twice a year, even great. Try to see a functional medicine doctor. Will have optimal ranges, because that's what we like, because the normal range is just what doctors take of all the blood work of everybody in the average of the population. And if you're in the US, the average person in the US, especially over the age of 50, is sick. So if you want to be sick and normal, that's fine. But if you want to be a little bit more optimal, then you want to have tighter ranges. Okay. And I've seen too many clients who might come to me and say, oh, my doctor said I'm pre-diabetic and there's nothing I can do. It's just, don't just, come back when you're diabetic and we'll give you some insulin. I'm like, no, there's things that you can do. So really, the message for those postmenopausal women is to please get your blood work done. There's some urine testing that you can do, depending on whatever it is that you're concerned about. Maybe you have a history of dementia, maybe you have a history of heart disease. Every woman needs to be worried, or not worried, or concerned, or pay attention to heart disease, right? It's really the most rampant one. And I think really we want to pay attention to that. And exercise is so important. It's one of those magic bullets. And I'm talking about appropriate exercise, because if you're in your 70s going, I'm not going to do what that 30 or 40-year-old woman's doing on Instagram, there's no way. No, we're not
You don't
expecting
have
you
to.
to do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're expecting you to do appropriate exercise for whatever stage of life that you're doing. And in terms of this, as we go through menopause and postmenopause, some of the best training that I have seen is, first of all, do what you love, because you're going to probably do whatever it is that you love. If it's running marathons and that chronic cardio, I would just say take it down a notch, because that creates cortisol. Cortisol, that stress hormone. We love stress hormone to be high in the morning or at certain appropriate times. It's not a bad thing, but we can't have this chronic elevated cortisol. And strength training, please, ladies, don't be afraid of lifting heavy weights. Sarcopenia is a real thing. That's the age-related muscle mass loss. Doesn't necessarily have anything to do with age. It has something to do with you're not using your muscles. You're not, if you don't use it, you do lose it. Also, with the loss of estrogen, we cannot build muscle as easily as we used to. So yeah, it's hard. This is where we're going to bump it up a notch. We do have to play a little bit harder as we get older, but it doesn't have to be killing you. I love flexibility and mobility, right? Get those joint issues, avoid injury, because we tend to get a little bit more injured when we're active in that, and as we age, so we can avoid it. And plyometrics, that's those sort of in those sort of rebounding or getting that impact exercises a little. Doesn't mean you have to, again, go for a run or do some crazy burpees or anything. You can do plenty of exercises that are appropriate for your level and for your age. And you can help lower your risk of osteoporosis or reverse it. And then you do need to get a little cardio for that heart and for the brain and for the blood flow. And I'd love to always include those lower cortisol level activities, balance them with high. If you're only doing yoga, I'm sorry, it's not enough. Or forest bathing, grounding, getting outdoors, all that stuff is great, but you need to have a little bit of both, not just one of only thing. And the other thing that's really important for women as we age is to recover, right? Especially if you're used to being active, you're used to, oh, okay, recovering a day, I'm gone. And now maybe we need 2 days, or maybe we need to dial into our bodies a little bit more, and we may need more time to recover. So give yourself that time to recover so that you can do all the things that you want to be doing and not get stuck because your injury is just not getting better. So those are some of the sort of fitness things and my little advice for staying fit, and I hope you agree. I don't know, but let me know.
Yeah, I think we're reading from the same book. I'm thinking everybody's going, oh, Kelly gave her cliff notes. No, Kelly didn't. This is no way. This is Zora and the knowledge that she knows. So thank you. Thank you so much for being here. I guess a couple of things you did an amazing guide on getting better sleep. That will be in the
Yes.
show notes. And
Great.
how do you want people to find you?
Hack My Age. If you can remember that, everything, all my social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, LinkedIn, all this stuff is all Hack My Age. And if you can't remember that, Zora the Explorer. If you ever had children watching Dora, they can remember Zora the Explorer. I'll probably pop up. And I'm on YouTube. I'm everywhere. So it's just Hack My Age.
Perfect. She is everywhere, and she is traveling everywhere too. So thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for having me.